Have you ever completely lost your mind in frustration, like you couldn't take anymore and just flipped out? Or maybe when you get stressed, you completely run away. You just shut down and withdraw, and you hate yourself for doing it. There are a lot of different ways that we respond to stress, and that's a problem, especially because the responses that I'm talking about are usually driven by fear, and fear is not good. It makes us blind to what is really going on and ultimately fragile. Think of all the famous examples of athletes who choked in the big game, or the star performers who froze on stage, or the famous leaders who crumbled literally at the most important moments. Something in each of these people was broken. They were all high performers until there was an increase in pressure, an increase in stress, and the once high-flying star crashed into the earth and sometimes never came back. My name is Tim Ohai, and I am a Fortune 500 executive coach. People typically hire me for two situations. It's usually to fix someone who's struggling or prep a high potential leader for the next level. And first of all, I don't fix anything. That's your job as the client. You fix yourself. You own your own stuff. But I do see blind spots and help people learn from them. And whether you are a problem child leader or a hypo leader, you will have at least one blind spot. We all do. Let me illustrate that by telling you about one of the conversations I had with a client of mine. It opened like this. I'm stuck. I'm working so hard and I just can't seem to get the breakthrough that I need. My team is under-resourced. It's getting harder and harder to deliver results. And I honestly don't know if I'm making a difference. Certainly not the difference I want to make. This conversation is incredibly typical. There are so many leaders who are simply frustrated and tired of doing things the same way over and over again. But it's worse than that, because when they go home, their brains don't turn off. They can't find the inner peace they know they should be experiencing when things are calm. And when I look at all the potential issues that could be causing a blind spot, this is the most common root cause issue I see. It's how we respond to stress. And more importantly, it's the way we become another personality. This other personality usually shows up in four ways. Number one, we stress out and start to blame everyone around us. We find every single possible thing that they are doing wrong and criticize it, all to prove that whatever bad is happening is not our fault. Number two, we implode and start to criticize everything that we are doing wrong. Everything is somehow our fault, and we bathe ourselves in shame. Number three, we disappear or shut off. We stop engaging and withdraw completely, physically and or emotionally. And we tell ourselves, no matter what happens, you can't blame us because we did nothing to contribute to the problem. And number four, we decide to do something about it, but in a way that is completely controlling and even manipulative. We set up every possible decision to work in our favor so that the possibility of making a mistake is somehow magically gone. I call this the two personality blind spot because in our own heads, we're telling ourselves that we're just being us. But when we talk with the people around us, they'll typically say things like, your personality changed, or you became someone else entirely. And that other person is clearly not the best version of ourselves, far from it, which leads to the bigger question, why? Why do we do this? Why do we retreat to such toxic behaviors when we know the best version of ourselves would handle the decision differently? In the famous words of St. Paul, the good things I want to do, I don't do. And the bad things I don't want to do, I do. If we are really honest with ourselves, we're embarrassed by our own Jekyll and Hyde dilemma. It boils down to what I call the ego-fear loop. Let me explain. We all have three core human drives: competence, relatedness, and autonomy. Competence is about the desire to do things really well. Relatedness is about having great social connections. And autonomy is about having the freedom to do things the way we want, when we want. Somewhere along the line, typically in our childhood, we learned that success, significance, and control give us massive dopamine hits that satisfy our core drives. In the middle of doing something really well, we won. And then everybody around us was excited. And that told us that winning is the goal we want to pursue. Another example is, instead of simply having great social connections, we were recognized as being special. And we found that dopamine hit to feel so good, we made that what we want to pursue. And then we took our desire for autonomy and freedom and found that when we aren't in control, bad things happen. So we become convinced that control is the ultimate goal. When we do that, though, something unhealthy happens. We take our sense of self, our sense of identity, what we call ego, and we attach it to the dopamine triggers so that we don't feel like us unless the dopamine hits are coming. So instead of focusing on being really good at something, we need to win. Instead of focusing on having great relationships, we need to be significant and recognized. And instead of focusing on having freedom, we need to be in control. And here's where it turns dark. We get lots of praise for being successful, significant, and in control. And we begin to turn the dopamine hits in our brain into an addiction. Literally, our brains crave the feeling we get from these things. We become addicts to the feeling that success, significance, and control provides until the surge fades and we have to do it all over again. Our lives become an endless pursuit of one big achievement after another, all in the name of ego, which opens the door to fear. You see, our egos will naturally create fear when they feel threatened. When our success is threatened, our egos create a fear of failure. When our significance is threatened, our egos create a fear of rejection. And when our control is threatened, our egos create a fear of risk and the unknown. And the greater our addictions, the greater the fear. And this is where the loop comes in. We become so addicted to success, significance, and control that we live in a state of fear whenever we are not actually being successful, significant, or in control. Literally, the moment the win is over, we start to look for another win. The moment we walk off the stage, we are looking for more recognition. The moment we share that things are in control, we start to look for risks we might not be seeing. We become anxious and nervous, and that's when the other person we don't like to be starts to take over. That part of us hijacks our lives so that every decision we're making is designed to recapture a sense of success, significance, and control. It's fear-based living. And if we have it really bad, other people notice. Our family notices. Our friends notice. Our teammates at work notice. And we hurt the very people we're trying to be connected to. And around it goes. For some of us, we wind up going from job to job, always hoping to find the perfect place to work. For others, we wind up losing our most important relationships through divorce or even estrangement. And regardless of the other two impacts, we all have to deal with what the loop does to our bodies. We pump out so many stress hormones that our bodies literally get sick. Our stress becomes insomnia, heart and digestive issues, chronic pain, and even cancer. And it's all because we attached our identities to the very things that stress us out. But it doesn't have to be this way. If you are an executive leader and you would like to break this cycle in your life, reach out to me. I can offer you two things. First, there are business best practices that will allow you to avoid all of the unnecessary stresses that simply don't belong. You see, it's because these best practices are missing that our work environments are generating dysfunction and waste, which only generates our fear responses because failure, rejection, and risk are running rampant on our teams. Secondly, just as important as the best practices, I can help you change the way you respond to stress when it happens. I can share the key principles and psychological truths that undo the addictions that we've become so familiar with. Working together, we can rewire your brain to go on a different path when stress does happen, because stress is inevitable. It will happen, but we don't have to let it hijack us and make us someone we don't want to be.